Well, good afternoon, everybody, and members. Welcome to this virtual meeting of the District Planning Committee. And welcome to members of the public who may be watching this on the District Council's streaming channels. I'm Councillor Robert Salisbury and I chair this committee. The other members of the committee are on your screens with their names shown. Councillor Sweetman is the vice chair, who would normally be, if we were in the chamber, be sitting with me. I'd just like to point out to particularly members of the public and other observers that from time to time you may see me speaking but hear no sound. There's nothing wrong with your audio output. I have a second communication channel open to officers and democratic services who are running the meeting for us. We are joined today by officers from democratic services, legal services and the planning division, along with other councillors, and Alison Hammond, who will be taking the minutes. And today our legal advisor is Tom Clark, Head of Regulatory Services. So turning to item 1 of the agenda, I'll first take the roll call and then ask our legal advisor to give the virtual meeting explanation. As usual, when I call your name, will you please unmute, say present and then mute again. Thank you. Councillor Bates, please.
Present, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor DeBell.
Present, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Eaves.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Hatton.
Present.
Councillor Jackson.
Present, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Laband.
Present.
Councillor Marsh.
Present.
Councillor Peacock. I don't see him on the screen either. Councillor Peacock. Councillor Salisbury, here I am. Councillor Sweetman, please.
Present.
Councillor Webb.
Present.
And Councillor Whitaker.
Present.
Thank you. Now turn to Tom Clark to give the legal definition, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This meeting is being conducted, a public meeting, but being conducted virtually by virtue of the regulations which the government issued at the beginning of April to deal with the situation with the pandemic, which obviously is still with us. Members are in charge of their own microphone and will be called at the discretion of the chairman. The voting on both these matters will be a named vote, which I will conduct, but the chairman will, I think, probably conduct the other votes, if there are any, by a raised hand. But the votes on the 2 items on the agenda will be named votes. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. For those who are speaking today, I will now read the public speaking procedure for you. There are 2 items and they'll be heard in agenda order. I will call speakers after the officer has taken members through the presentation of the item. When I invite you to speak, please unmute your microphone, make your statement to the committee, and then afterwards mute your microphone again. You'll have 3 minutes to present your submission to the committee, and this I will time, and I will advise you when the 3 minutes is up, and I would ask you then to finish up the sentence that you're saying, and that'll be the completion of your speech. Questions by speakers to members, officers and other speakers are not permitted. And at the resolution of the item, because we've got 2 items today, public speakers for that application will be removed from the Zoom meeting. And if you wish to watch the remainder of the meeting, you can do so via the Council's YouTube channel. So to item 2 of the agenda, apologies for absence. I have received none. To receive declarations of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda, could you indicate with the raised hand function, please? Councillor Sweetman, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I've just had a message from Councillor Peacock saying he's I think he might be having trouble dialing it in and sends his apologies.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Councillor Jackson, please. I think you're muted, Councillor Jackson.
As far as item 7 is concerned, on the Northern Arc, part of the area is in the parish of Hurstbury Point and Sayers Common, of which I'm a parish councillor.
Okay, that's noted. Thank you very much indeed. Item 4, to confirm minutes of the previous meeting of the District Planning Committee held on the 17th of December. For approval of this, I'm advised by officers that the normal voting buttons are not functioning correctly, and therefore can you please indicate acceptance of the minutes by the raised hand function, and you have 30 seconds to do it. I have no feedback from members. So we have 9 agreed, so that is approved. Thank you. I see people have used their their reactions rather than their raised hand, but that's okay, that's fine. We've got both up. Right, moving on to item 5, to consider any items that the chairman agrees to take as urgent business. I have none, so we move to item 6. Item 6 is DM 202763. Land to the south of Scamps Hill, Skanes Hill Road, Linfield. We will go through this and we will take a presentation from Mr. Ashton, please, on this site.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I start the presentation, just want to make sure that members have had the opportunity to have a look at the update sheet that was circulated earlier today. And just for those members of the public who may not have seen that, just to set out that it sets out that we received one additional letter of representation. There's a slight amendment to the wording of condition 2, and there are suggested 6 additional informatives, which relate to the condition clearance matters which the applicant has submitted alongside the application. Those are dealt with as informatives, as they are not subject to committee's consideration or approval because they are condition clearance matters. So turning to the presentation. So the application site is outlined in red. It sits to the south of Scamps Hill, Skanes Hill Road, which is highlighted here with my cursor. It's formed of approximately 25 hectares, made up of 10 separate field parcels and paddocks. This aerial photo provides a more visual context, and just for members' clarification, the plan is upside down to the one you've just seen, so north is at the bottom of the screen. So Skanes Hill Road and Scamps Hill is to the north of the site here. You have Woolstead Place, Woolstead Lee and Woolstead Place cottages here, which sit to the east of the proposed access, which is shown by this yellow triangle here. You have the existing junction of East Maskell's Lane to the north, as well as Titchbourne cottages, which are located on the northern side of Scamps Hill Road here. To the west of the site is 2 Woolstead cottages, which is highlighted here with my cursor. To the west of the site, and denoted by the blue line, is the Northlands Brook. And to the west of Northlands Brook is Heathwood Park. This is quite an old photo. That was the earlier phase of Heathwood Park, but this development extends all the way along this eastern boundary. The dotted yellow line here is the proposed pedestrian cycle link from the development to Heathwood Park. The southern end of the site, again highlighted by my cursor, is where the existing informal area of recreation is located, which was secured and serves the Heathwood Park development. This at present is serviced by an existing pedestrian link approximately in this location here. To the east of the site is Snowdrop Lane. Application before members is reserved matters for the layout, appearance, scale and landscaping of 200 dwellings associated with an outline permission granted on appeal by the Secretary of State in March 2018. The outline permission did make provision for land for a one form-entry school, and it is this area of land, again highlighted by my cursor. The details of this element do not form part of this application and are set out on page 32 of the report. The transfer of this land to the County Council, along with a financial contribution, is secured in the signed Section 106 legal agreement that accompanies the outline application permission. It's important to note that the outline permission does not require the detail of the scheme to come forward as part of this reserved matter application, and it will be for the County Council to come forward with an application following the transfer of the land. The layout shows that the dwellings will mainly be located on the western side of the site, which generally forms the lowest part of the site, while the eastern element will be taken up by the proposed country park, which again are the more elevated elements of the site. A new pedestrian cycle link is proposed in the location shown here on the western side of the proposed development to link through to the existing Heathwood Park development and the remainder of sort of Linfield and Haywards Heath further to the west and south. The proposal contains a range of 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 bed dwellings. The housing mix is dealt with on pages 25 and 26 of the report before you. But essentially, in terms of the grey units are the proposed 1 and 2 bed flats. The yellow units shown on the plan here and here are 2 bed houses, while the orange colours represent the 3 bed houses. Red, which are mainly located at the southern end of the site, are 4 bed, while the purple houses are the 5 bed units. The outline permission secures 30% affordable housing, which equates to 60 units. The applicants themselves are an affordable housing provider, and the submission includes a further 10 additional affordable units over and above the policy compliance scheme secured at the outline stage. The 10 additional units are highlighted on this plan as the dark grey units here, 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 and there's also a flat. The purplish colour represent the social rented units, while the grey units represent the shared ownership units. So the overall provision, affordable provision on the site is 70 units, which equates to 35%. In respect of building heights, the majority of the dwellings will be 2-storey. And this can be seen on the plan by the light coloured units shown, which cover the majority of the site. A limited number of 3-storey buildings are proposed. They equate to 14 in total, and these are the darker red units here and here. And these are located around the central Wetland Walk area on the western side of the site. As set on page 22 and 23 of the report, the details submitted at the outline stage indicated that the majority of the site would be 2-storey, with limited 2.5-storey in key locations. However, and importantly, no parameter plans were approved as part of the outline permission, and the submitted details show the proposed 3-storey buildings are on one of the lowest points of the site and will not break the roofscape of the rest of the scheme. And that's demonstrated by this section drawing here, where you see the orange blocks, which are the 3-storey units, and then you can see the remainder of the development outlined behind it. And as you can see, the proposal does not break the roof line of those highest units. In terms of parking, a total of 429 spaces are to be provided, split between garages, carports, on-street parking and visitor parking. And this plan shows how that is dispersed across the site. These matters are set out on page 24 and 25 of your report. It's worth noting at this point that it's proposed that 33% of the spaces will have EV charging points, and these details are to be secured via condition, and it's condition 1 which refers to this provision. Detailed landscaping details have been submitted with the application, and these details are set out on page 29 to 31 of the report. The largest element of the landscaping of the site is the country park, which is located on the eastern part of the site. Part of the country park is a replacement for the informal recreation area, which was provided as part of the Heathwood Park development. So it's this area here which currently forms the informal recreation area to Heathwood Park, and obviously, as you can see, it's proposed that this will be developed. So that provision has been re-provided over here as part of the wider country park. To the front of the site, an orchard is to be provided. It's located here with my cursor and bullet point 1, along with a wetland walk area and around the main attenuation point to the west of the site, which is this area in here. 3 play areas are provided. So you have one play area here, another one here, and a smaller one here, as well as significant tree planting and habitat creation. It's worth mentioning at this point that the future management of the country park is secured through the Section 106 legal agreement associated with the outline permission, which provides for it to be transferred to and managed by the Land Trust, which is detailed on pages 30 to 31 of the report. And the Land Trust is a charitable organisation who manage open space for the benefit of the public. Just a little bit more detail in terms of the 2 main sort of landscape features on the site. The one on the left-hand side of the screen here is the wetland walk area. You can see in terms of its positioning, it's next to or adjacent to the proposed access point to Heathwood Park. So in terms of the connectivity and the potential wider community benefit, this area has will have a significant draw. It includes obviously the attenuation point, a pontoon sort of walk across the wetland area, as well as a walk around it. It lies adjacent to the play area, and as well as the significant oak tree that is to remain on site. The right-hand side shows the proposed orchard area to the front of the site and Scamps Hill. So this is Scamps Hill, the site entrance, and the proposed orchard area to the east. It's worth picking up two further issues regarding the site frontage. As set out on pages 20 to 21 of the report, the inspector at the appeal stage raised concerns with the approach to the development along the Scamps Hill frontage, shown on the submitted master plan at the time. So it's the right-hand side, as highlighted here, is the outline master plan and what was in front of the inspector at the time. The submission has sought to address the concerns raised by the inspector by providing a strong built form. So in terms of the proposal now, then this is on the right-hand side. So it's proposing a strong built form set back from Scamps Hill, akin to the existing properties to the west of the site, behind a strong and defined landscaping plan, which includes the access to the east of the site. The second matter worth highlighting is the triangle of land to the north of Scamps Hill, which includes highways arrangements which were approved at the outline stage in terms of a new realignment and junction to East Maskell's Lane. So the existing junction point is here. Obviously, given the proximity to the consented access, that needed to be moved. So a new priority junction is to be located here, which cuts across this triangle of land, which is currently a field. It's worth highlighting that no development is planned or shown either side of this access. All development is to the south of Scamps Hill. The next two slides just show some selected sort of street, typical street elevations, and this top one here is the actual frontage to Scamps Hill. So this is what you see as you go into the site in terms of, and then this second one is actually this street that through the middle, which leads down into the central area. So these are the properties at the front, which then leads down. This is one of the proposed flat blocks. And the bottom slide here, or the bottom images, show the proposed 3-storey units, which are around the central Wetland Walk area. These 3 images show the form of housing more at the southern end of the site. And particularly these units shown at the bottom are ones right at the southern end, which actually front on to the country park. Just in terms of a bit more detail in terms of some of the selected elevations, this top image is one of the blocks of flats. So as you can see, it's been purposely designed to replicate terraced housing and fit in with the adjacent houses in terms of their form and height. And you will note from your report in terms of the urban designers' views in respect to these designs. This slightly more detailed image of the 3-storey units, which will be clad rather than brick. Or the majority of the site, as shown with the other units, will be using a stock brick with either clay tiles or slate, along with brick detailing as well. These are just a few selected sort of images that were contained in the design and access statement. This is one of the central Wetland Walk area with the 3-storey buildings. This is leading up off the central area towards the country park, and the one in the bottom right here is one of the areas that actually fronts on at the southern end of the site to the country park. As you can see at the front there, there's a conscious effort to actually set the properties back behind a small landscaped area, which become more of a communal area for those properties which surround it. Just briefly, some photos. This is the site frontage. So this is Scamps Hill. So this is the approximately where the site access will be constructed. Unfortunately, the hedge on both sides of the road is to be removed in order to facilitate the access arrangements. Although native planting, hedge planting, is proposed as replacement, as well as obviously the orchard and heavy planting on the application site. This is facing towards Woolstead Lee and Woolstead Place cottages, which are located just off the photo here, but you can see the Victorian wall, which is referred to in some of the submissions, that is to be retained and become a feature. This is looking north from the application site towards Scamps Hill itself, and this is Titchbourne cottages located here. And this photo is actually looking westwards towards 2 Woolstead cottages. Moving down into the site a little bit more, the top left is actually a view across the school, or the land area allocated for the school. This image is looking down across the western sort of Wetland Walk area, and you can see Heathwood Park development in the background. And this one is actually looking more south across the bottom end of the site, and the existing informal recreation area, which is located here. More of a sort of panoramic view here. This is Woolstead Place. So this is taken from where one of the higher points in the proposed country park. This is Woolstead Place. You have the Woolstead frontage here, This is Heathwood Park, located over here. It's worth noting, you can probably just about make out where my cursor is here, that there are actually 3-storey properties within the Heathwood Park development. And what you'd have laid out in front of you would be the development at the lower end of the site. And this photo is just actually taken from Heathwood Park, where the proposed cycle and pedestrian link will be, looking back into the site. So in respect of the issues, a detailed report is before you. It's considered that the proposed layout, appearance, scale of the proposals are acceptable. Officers consider that the scheme is well considered and thoughtful, and when considered in tandem with the comprehensive landscape proposal, the development will make a positive contribution to the character and appearance of the area. It should be noted that both your urban designer and the Mid-Sussex Design Review Panel support the scheme. Access and highway matters have already been found to be acceptable at the outline stage, and given the proposed level of parking is in accordance with the local highway authorities' adopted guidance, no objections have been raised in respect of highway matters. The proposal provides for an acceptable housing mix, and the proposed affordable units are appropriately integrated across the site. It is noted that the applicant is providing an additional 10 affordable units over and above what is required by policy, and that's secured through the outline permission, and it's considered that this should be given significant positive weight. It's not considered that the proposal will give rise to any likely significant harm to adjacent residential amenities by means of overlooking loss of privacy, loss of outlook, or by means of noise or light pollution. All the dwellings comply with the dwelling space standards, and the scheme has considered sustainability in both its design and layout. It's considered that the application complies with the development plan when read as a whole, which is the proper basis for a decision making, and the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for Mr. Ashdown. We have 3 speakers to this today. Call Mr. Richard Gossage, please, who's a resident of Walstead.
Hi, thank you for that presentation there. I'll just read through my presentation. Hopefully everyone can hear me. We're just going sort of quickly. The proposal was originally refused, and then it was given permission by the Secretary of State because they said houses were needed. But obviously it's a difficult piece of land, and obviously we're still talking about those design issues now that need to be sort of agreed. The main points for the Walstead residences are the drainage of the site. We're having much more rain, and the rain runs down to the river, which is Northlands Brook, which runs to the other side of Walstead. We've already seen the issues of the Linfield Meadows development just off Graveley Lane, where that was flooding Skeins Hill Road for most of early sort of 2020, end of 2019, and they had to build barriers to stop that. There's a proposed attenuation pond, which just saw in the presentation there, but it doesn't deal with the sort of north end of the site that adjoins Skeins Hill Road, because that's much lower where the attenuation pond is, and the water runs down the hill. So we need to have much better drainage mentioned there, otherwise the properties running down Skeins Hill Road will be flooded for years to come. Another very big issue there, I just saw a slight change to the road layout, but the quantity and speed of the cars along Skeins Hill Road. This section of the road, it should be 20 miles an hour as part of the planning conditions, and then maybe 30 miles an hour for the rest of the road leading towards Linfield. At the moment it's 40 miles an hour, and it's very fast there. It's going to be very dangerous for the school residents and pedestrians with, you know, minimum 400 extra cars going down there a day. This obviously is quite a big consideration for the local area because it's carving up the sort of green triangular field opposite us, turning into a roundabout. There'll be lots of people trying to turn right into development, and we really hope you can consider that option a lot more and get better detail from the developer, because it's not looking very good at the moment for the Walstead residences. The appearance of the houses. We just saw there some clear photos of what the existing buildings look like, and the proposed development doesn't look anything like those. You can see the Titchbourne cottages. It doesn't match local architecture. I don't know where cladding into the existing architecture or townhouses or tall windows. So these need to be really considered, since it's in a rural area and they stick out. They've obviously tried to match existing planning permissions given, so that's where they're trying to weight, but it just doesn't suit the local area. So I don't know where that argument comes from. I did have a comment here about the school, but I can see that's been dealt with a Section 106 contribution. So I hope you're going to consider that further and make sure that does happen. Last 2 points.
I just want to call your attention to it being 3 minutes.
Okay, is it 3 minutes now?
It is, yes.
Okay, I just want to quickly raise the point of the height of the land that we, Woolstead cottages, we're the same height, our roof is the same height as the ground level there. So they're obviously very high, and I know they've put in those images, but it's slightly swayed there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gossage. Our next speaker is Gil Kennedy, please, from the Lindfield Preservation Society.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me all right?
Can hear you. Thank you very much.
It's worth recalling for a moment the planning history of this scheme, how following widespread local opposition, your committee decisively refused outline permission in 2016, how the planning inspector at the inevitable appeal also found that permission should be refused, and how regrettably the then Secretary of State called the application in and granted permission anyway. We are where we are now, and development in some form will take place, but that does not mean that any form of development is acceptable. The least we should be able to expect at this stage are measures to mitigate the overall impact of the development, which after all flies in the face of both local opinion and the decision of our elected representatives. The application before you signally fails to do this. DP 26 requires that all development will reflect the distinctive character of the towns and villages while being sensitive to the countryside. Judging the quality of any design is a notoriously subjective exercise, and simply stating, as the committee report does, that it is considered that the scheme benefits from a well-considered and thoughtful layout most certainly does not make it so. We ask the committee to consider the drawings before you and to ask yourselves how they could possibly be seen to reflect the distinctive character of Wallstead and its countryside as the district plan requires. The proposal before you was clearly an off-the-shelf design that mirrors suburban estates across the country. The result would be a sprawling, alien intrusion that would dominate the hamlet of Wallstead, as well as what would be left of the surrounding countryside. The effect would be exacerbated by the applicant's current proposal to increase the bulk of the housing units beyond dimensions for which they have outline planning permission. The design of this estate is overbearing, unneighborly, and out of character with the hamlet and its setting. It therefore contravenes DP 26, and permission should be refused for this reason. We note also that the application is strangely silent on the provision of a school, simply stating, as the committee report does, that the school site will need to come forward under a separate application will not make this issue go away. West Sussex County Council has, as far as we know, made no commitment to building, staffing, or running such a school, and yet it is well documented that the local school system has long been oversubscribed. There is by definition no capacity for the arrival of 200 more households. A binding condition should therefore be attached to any eventual approval requiring the provision of a new school is guaranteed before any construction takes place. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kennedy. And our third speaker is Mrs. Judith Ashton, please, the agent. Mrs. Ashton, are you with us?
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I was trying to actually turn my video on as well so you could see me, but it doesn't seem to want to let me.
There you are, you're on now.
Right, thank you. Good afternoon, thank you for allowing me to speak. This is a reserved matters application. The principle of the site's development for 200 dwellings, a 1-form entry primary school and 9.5 hectare country park, having been established by the outline consent. This application relates to the details of the layout, scale, appearance and landscaping of the proposed dwellings and associated country park, the triggers for the transfer of the school land and the delivery and management of the country park being matters addressed in the Section 106 agreement entered into at the outline stage. The reserved matters application itself has been the subject of detailed and lengthy pre-application discussions. We are pleased to see that officers believe the scheme benefits from a well-considered and thoughtful layout that, alongside the proposed contemporary approach, will create a distinctive and high-quality development, and that when considered holistically alongside the comprehensive landscaping proposals, will make a positive contribution to the character and appearance of the area. It is acknowledged this has been a landscape-led scheme, which has sought to take into account the existing topography and landscape features, and proposes new landscaping areas that will aid the integration of the scheme into the surrounding context. Careful consideration has also been given to recreational provision and ecological enhancement throughout the scheme. The proposed development provides for a mix of house types, sizes and tenures, ranging from 1 to 5 bedroom units, with 10 more affordable units than required by policy. The proposed dwellings themselves comply with national space standards and meet the required standards for accessibility. In addition, the level of parking provided is in accordance with adopted standards and is discreetly accommodated to ensure it does not dominate the street scene. 33% of spaces will be provided with EV charging facilities, and the proposed development looks to minimise energy use through the adoption of a fabric-first approach, the use of high-efficient counterflow heat exchanger and 100% heat recovery. It also looks to meet water consumption standards of 110 litres per person per day. As set out in the committee report, there would not be any significant adverse impact on the residential amenities of the occupiers of the properties that adjoin the site. We do, however, recognise concerns that have been expressed by local residents regarding, in particular, the access arrangements during the construction period, and will, through the separate construction management plan, be seeking to demonstrate how Southern Housing Group will look to mitigate any potential environmental impacts arising through the construction process. Southern Housing Group themselves are a registered housing provider who will take on the management of the affordable homes if this application is approved. This, we hope, will provide some reassurance that they are investing in this site for the longer term and are committed to delivering a high quality scheme that delivers not just the new houses, but the country park and the primary school, and a host of other contributions to local infrastructure and facilities, as set out in the 106, entered into at the outline stage. We therefore hope you will resolve to approve this application in accordance with your officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Mrs. Ashton. We don't have a ward member speaking today, so that concludes the speakers. Just before we enter into the debate, members, I'd just like to draw your attention, as I always do when we're following an outline application, just to mention that the conditions, many of the conditions which will apply to this site, will of course be in the back of the report DM 154457, which is the original outline permission and the inspector's report of just one thing I'd like Mr. Ashdown to clear up is on the update sheet. It shows some of the conditions have been discharged, which we can note, and then it says additional information. Item 8 on the additional information refers to drainage and levels, and it said they're considered acceptable in principle. These details can be agreed until consents have been received. I assume that should be cannot be agreed.
Yes, that's correct, Chairman. It should be cannot.
Thank you very much. Members, there are two things which have been mentioned and which I know that Linfield Rural Parish Council have very concerned about. And I'd just like to try and clear these up. One is the provision of the school. It's very clear on page 32 of the report that the land is being handed over freehold to West Sussex. We don't have a reserved matters application before us for the school. That will come along as and when the requirement for the school is there, as you all know. But I believe that answers the question on the school. It's the freehold that's being handed over. The other one, which is a major issue, is the country park, which is particularly raised by Linfield Rural Parish Council on page 40. And that, of course, was all part of the S106, and the S106 is signed. So there is little point in this committee trying to make changes to that. And Mr. Clark, if you wouldn't mind, if you could just outline to the committee the provision there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The country park was secured as part of the outline permission, and it did in fact move some open space area that was previously going to be on this site, as Mr. Ashton explained, onto the country park area. The country park is secure under that Section 106 agreement, and as Mr. Ashton explained, it's going to be run by a land trust, and that's all confirmed at the bottom of page 28 of your report and top of page 29.
Thank you very much. So, members, we don't have a Linfield member on this committee, so I throw it open to anybody who wishes to start the debate. Thank you. Everybody rushing. Oh, here we go. Thank you. Councillor Bates, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Must congratulate the planning team on preparing a very thorough case for this one. I've got a few items I'd like to cover, so please bear with me. I'll be as brief as possible. Firstly, the things I do like, the LED lighting in the country park and leisure area is specified as 300 degrees Kelvin, which is warm white. It's ecologically, environmentally friendly. So I'm very pleased to actually see that spec there. It strikes me that driving from Worsted down towards Linfield on the left-hand side, as you approach the bottom of it's either Linfield Meadows or Heathwood Park, there's something that's reminiscent on the left-hand side of a northern red brick mill, which is quite a monstrosity. I don't know how that actually could have manifested itself to actually appear in that development, but I hope that similar mistakes are not, shall we say, repeated when if this development is actually delivered as per the plan. The land trust that Steve Ashton has referred to in terms of the management of the country park, I do have a question: is how it's funded and how sustainable is that funding, please? And I'd like to come back later, just in case anybody else doesn't mention it, in terms of footpath provision at the bottom end of the park, to which neighbouring ward members have actually asked for, to provide a direct footpath pedestrian access between that development towards Beach Hill for the pharmacy, doctors, school, etc. I think that's it for now. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bates, please.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm fairly local. I know the area quite well. I like actually cycling in the area and doing my training there. But one thing I did pick up on was the alteration of the roadway, and the comment made by the local resident. The speed issue needs to be resolved, and if we can get that conditioned and lower the speed on that length of road, that would be grateful. Overall, I'm quite happy with this development. Some points I wanted to raise are that I assume that the condition 2 about the crossing of the Northlands Brook is a bridge will be similar to the one that exists, and that really answers the question Councillor Band was asking, is that there's going to be 2 crossings there into the other development onwards towards the pharmacy. The police on page 49 talk about a police excessive permeability, and I was curious to know if that related to this new crossing or what. I'd be interested to know about that. I presume that the country park will be safeguarded against further development. I like the management that's being set up there. I would, as I often do on all of these proposals, is I'd like to see a better access to the site than just pulling off the existing road. So otherwise you get cars having to pull up behind other cars or waiting in the road, queuing up behind to enter into that development. So that issue, I'll come up with that time and time again. The point about the flooding in the area, well, I think it is the site is managed with the rainwater. I mean, if you go further down, I cycle further out into Woolstead, I'm always confronted with flooded roads there, which has nothing to do with this development whatsoever. So I'll leave it at that. That I think, apart from the issue of the design and the character to Woolstead, well, I think it's the same old story, isn't it, about development. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. Okay, well, the footpaths are, you go one way, you go another. Here we have members saying we need footpaths going in to give us access to various places, and the police say this gives too much permeability. The whole thing is about a balance, and so we have what we have there, which is an access through, which two members have raised over the bridge, and the police have made a comment about it, but we are there to take the balanced view on what access there should be. We've mentioned that the Land Trust, Mr. Clark did. Mr. Clark, would you just like to come back and give people reassurance about the Land Trust? It's a major national group. Perhaps you'd just like to say a few words about that.
Yes, it's a charitable organisation, and that is their purpose. So it is unlikely they would want to do anything than keep it in good order. What's good order, though, at the moment has changed, obviously, because people are far more interested in sustainability than they perhaps were a few years back. So I suspect they'll go for a fairly natural appearance for the country park as opposed to something more ordered.
Thank you. In terms of speed, this is the one we have at every major development that we have. Highways have said that it's passed its safety audits and they approve it. We tread very carefully around that, and I think the access has been approved, and it's been approved at Secretary of State level. So whilst I acknowledge what you're saying, Councillor, I think that that's pretty much a cul-de-sac for us. Perhaps though, Mr. Ashdown, you'd like to just comment on the Environmental Agency permissions with reference to the flooding conditions and what you think of the lighting, because one or two of the local consultations referred to dark skies. Perhaps you'd just like to give us a view on that.
Thank you, Chairman. If I perhaps touch on the sort of flooding and environmental Environment Agency issues to start off with. I think again, if members refer to the informative, which relates to the drainage conditions, which are 3 and 4, your drainage engineer has gone through all of the technical details that have been submitted in support of the application, and he is satisfied with all the elements that have been submitted. The only thing that is outstanding is that the land drainage consents to the outfalls from the attenuation ponds here and here into the main river, i.e. the Northland Brook. So once those consents have been obtained from the Environment Agency and all the drainage details are submitted back to us, including those consents, then the drainage details will be approved. And just to pick up on one of the comments that drainage that was made by one of the speakers, the area to the north of the site. I'll just share my screen, Chairman. So the area to the north of the site here, where it fronts onto Scamps Hill, the submitted drainage details show that all the surface water from this area does drain to the south into this attenuation pond and the swale system that is located here. So everything from here goes south into this attenuation pond and then is discharged into Northlands Brook. While obviously everything in the southern part of the site goes to the attenuation pond at the southern end before discharging into the brook. In terms of the lighting, then obviously I have noted the comments from the parish council in terms of the dark sky. Again, as set out in the report, I believe it's page. Let me just find it for you, Chairman. So it's on page 28. The lighting scheme has been designed to comply in terms of the Institute lighting professional guidance for a low district brightness, so something which is appropriate for a village or a relatively dark sky. And I would note that I wasn't able to find a dark sky policy within the neighbourhood plan, but in terms of the lighting proposals, then they have been designed appropriate for a site in this location on the edge of a village. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Whitaker, please.
Thank you, Chairman. There are four basic criteria as outlined by the officer to consider. Layout, which I think is very good. Landscaping, I think, is exceptional. Scale and mix, including the affordable housing, I think is very good. The last of the fourth criteria is appearance. And frankly, I'm appalled by the appearance of these houses. I've been through the D&A statement, which is very comprehensive, design and access statement. They are bland. There are two brick types, as I can find only. None of the houses have any eaves or verge or bargeboard details, which make them, to my mind, bland boxes, and that's what they look like. And if they're built in that form, and I've seen those style of houses elsewhere in other districts, and they look awful. And I thought about this a lot over the last few days, and I really do feel very strongly. I refer to our own district plan references, page 3, paragraph 2. Our towns and settlements, these are distinct communities with their own heritage, characteristics and aspirations. And as outlined already by the president of the Linfield Preservation Society, clearly this scheme in appearance doesn't, in my opinion. Page 8, strategic objective of our district plan: to promote well-designed development that reflects the district's distinctive towns and villages and retains their character. Again, the appearance and the design of these, I don't think complies with that strategic objective. Page 18, supporting neighbourhood plans. Give local communities the confidence to accept appropriate development. Well, the appearance of these, I don't think they will accept. I don't feel that they will consider this is appropriate development. Also our Mid-Sussex Design Guide, which has recently been adopted. Page 15, paragraph 1.7.7, that high quality, well-designed buildings that are in keeping with their environment. Again, I don't think the appearance complies with that. Page 94, introduction. The overall appearance should display underlying architectural integrity and contribute to a sense of place by being born from their location. Again, no way do the elevations of any of these houses, frankly, to my mind, comply with our own design guide. House type number 5 is about the ugliest house I think I've ever seen in my whole career in housing and planning. So at the end of the day, what you see is what you're going to get. And frankly, the appearance of this, I'm very, very disappointed. In overall terms, I think it's a well put together planned development, technically very good as well, but I'm extremely disappointed with the appearance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Page 23, the Mid Sussex Design Review Panel says the building design takes a refreshingly contemporary approach with a variational mix that works well. Design and art is in the eye of the beholder. I'm going to come back to that one in a minute. Can we please have Councillor Marsh, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I've got a list of things, but I like what you've just said there. Contemporary. It's a word that I don't particularly like, unfortunately. I'm glad Councillor Whitaker has mentioned that, because quite frankly, I've seen Croydon comes to mind. This is meant to be on the outskirts of a village. Far from it. I quite like the way the layout of it is, and I've got to compliment the developer for doing the up and above the affordable housing, which is excellent. But I've got a couple of things. I'm going to go back to the housing later, but there's a couple of other bits and pieces I really want to highlight. 70 units of affordable, but only 2 are wheelchair accessible, which I don't think is particularly good. We've got more than that in the 17 development in my village. That's 17 units, not 70. I know they've picked up on the EV points, 33% across the whole of the network. And I had a look at the policy, and it says 2019. We've had quite a few governmental decrees from there. Perhaps we need to relook at that one, or the county needs to relook at it, because by 2030 we're meant to be 100% electrical vehicles, not 33%. So what I would like to see is, if it's not just the 33% are going to be built, that the trunking is all put in place prior to it, so you don't have to dig up the roads again to do that. So I quite like that idea, if you're going to do that. What else have I got on here? You've answered the question about the land trust. Not much I can go there. Reserve matters. This is what we're discussing today. And as our legal officer just said, well, we want to be more natural in the park. Well, how much of the park are we going to expect disabled people to go over? I'm dealing with a sensitive situation down in Sussex with the national park, of trying to get some of our parks upgraded so people in wheelchairs can actually enjoy the countryside. So I would like to think that the path network across this open space is actually so people of all walks of life and fitness and able to enjoy. I'm really disappointed, and the one thing I'm really disappointed, because I can see us setting ourselves up for a real problem, or more importantly, the developer's going to set himself up for a bigger problem, because it's now happening across the whole of the district. 4-bedroom and 5-bedroom houses aren't selling. We've got too many of these, and we're going to have 53 out of the 200 houses are going to be 4- and 5-bedroom houses. I would have liked to have seen a lot more 2-bedroom houses. 3-bedroom, there's 53 of them, which is fine, but 4- and 5-bedroom houses, they're just not going to sell them. They may sell 25% of them, but then we're going to have an application come in. Oh, can we change this down? Like we just had one down in Sayers Common recently, for those who sit on my committee. Going back to Councillor Whitaker's, I'm glad he mentioned that, because I can't have been the only person here thinking, oh my God, these are the ugliest buildings I've seen for a very, very long time. And you yourself, Chairman, mentioned contemporary in nature. Contemporary in nature is great in a an urban situation, but definitely not in a rural situation. And I just, for that reason and that reason only, I'm not 100% I can support it. I'd like the idea. I really want to support it. However, is this the best that they can do in terms of the way they look? They look horrendous, absolutely diabolical. And we're meant to say, oh yes, we'll go for it because we want the housing, and we do want the housing, and but at any cost. So I'll go with what the rest of the committee. I like to listen to what the other committees say, but I really don't like the way they look, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. We are assured this is a bespoke design. Actually, I would believe that. I haven't seen anything similar to these houses in some of the open book stuff that we get. I don't know whether it's. I'm going to refer the design issue to either Mrs. Blomfield or Steve Ashdown. Have you between you? Have you got your design guide in front of you, and you can deal with design aspects for us, which is clearly vexing people.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry. Yeah, so in terms of the, I think, first of all, and as clearly set out in the report, I think we need to make it clear that both the urban designer and the Mid Sussex Review Panel both support the scheme, and certainly in terms of my dealings with the design panel on various other larger developments across the district, then I haven't come across them being more supportive of a scheme than they are in terms of this one. That aside, I think there's certainly a couple of points in terms of the design guide that are worth flagging up. In terms of, sorry, I'm just trying to flick to them as I as I talk. So where is it? So DG 11. I had it a second ago. Apologies, Chairman. So DG 11 deals with responding to existing townscapes, heritage and historic landscapes. But what it does say is that there may be, it says while development should generally reflect the scale of adjacent areas and the settlement context, and I think we agree that in terms of the scale of development being proposed, in terms of predominantly two-storey, as in the surrounding context, then that is the case. But it does say on larger urban extensions, and this is for 200 dwellings, then there is the potential to introduce different characters. And I'd go further in terms of DG 38. Sorry, I'm just going to flip there now. So DG 38 deals with design buildings and architectural integrity. It says, I'll read the principle out, the majority of it out. It says, applicants should establish an architectural approach and identity in the design of the building that is born from the place. The facade and elevational treatment, roofscape, fenestration and materials used in existing buildings within the locality should be the starting point for the consideration of architectural design of new buildings. However, this should not result in a pastiche replicas of traditional buildings. Instead, a reinterpretation of key aspects of their form should be demonstrated. Good architecture involves the successful coordination of proportions, materials, colour and detail. Buildings should therefore be holistically designed with each part in harmony with its whole, while appropriately responding both in its context and modern living requirements. Now, I think what you have in terms of the design approach, they are taking traditional roof forms, they're using traditional materials, apart from the sort of cladding, which is just limited around the central area of the site, which isn't widely open to wider views. But they are taking traditional methods in terms of roof form materials and applying them in a contemporary way. I appreciate some people will not like the design. I for one, as set out in the report, wholly support what is being shown, and I think this development provides the opportunity to to create a development which isn't like others within the district. It does respond to the context, its landscape context in terms of the topology across the site, if there was any sense that the design did not accord with the newly adopted design guide, then your urban designer would be the first one to flag that up to us as officers. So I appreciate it is a subjective matter, but certainly the design and the development is as a whole, in your officer's view, is high quality and is worthy of support, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Ashdown. I'm always mindful of the appeal at Sunt Avenue, where we were taken to task in no uncertain terms by the inspectorate over officers' advice. And I'm just wondering, with the design guide in front of an inspector and with the advice given by both the review panel and the urban designer and yourselves, quite where he would go with us on that decision. But I mean, if we're going to criticise design, we're going to have something very specific. I'm afraid I don't like it is not a planning reason for something. We do have to be a bit more specific in our criticism of that. Can I just take you then, please, to the mix of housing, 4 and 5 bed houses. You and I spoke about this, Mr. Ashdown, didn't we? We had a little discussion about the saleability of them. And can you just give us a brief overview of the view of discussions you had with the developer on that?
Thanks, Chair. I understand that the members' concerns about the saleability of larger units, but in terms of the mix proposed, then it does reflect the overall district need as set out in the header that supported the district plan, and ultimately, if at this stage the developer, bearing in mind where they would have done market research, if they believe they cannot sell these properties, then they would not be proposing them. I say unless there are specific and clear evidence to demonstrate that the proposed housing mix is unacceptable and doesn't comply with policy, then we have to accept that the mix that they're coming forward with, which again, in my view, does comply with that policy, is one which they can build and one that they can sell, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Disabled access to the park and indeed disabled provision in the houses, only 2 properties. Where did the discussions go on that?
Well, in terms of the wheelchair units, then that will be as set out in the legal agreement. So we would specify in terms of the affordable, and they do apply to affordable units only in terms of wheelchair units, how many is required, and that would have been set out at the outline stage in terms of the proposed mix. Your housing officer is content in respect of that in relation to the affordable units. In terms of the access to the country park, I think it's worth noting that the existing pedestrian link to the informal recreation area as it stands at this minute in time isn't particularly mobility-wise access, because I have had complaints about that link as it is at this minute in time. The saving grace was or is the proposed link as now suggested, which will be wider, which will allow full mobility access through from Heathwood Park, for example, into the new development. One has to be mindful that in terms of the country park and indeed the existing informal recreation area, there are issues of slope, and they are now and they remain so. But obviously, as set out, that they are proposing Moan Pass and links through, so that there will be accessibility. But we have to bear in mind that with all country parks, particularly one on a sloping site such as this, then that they might not be able to access all parts of that park, Chairman.
That's usually the case with particularly sloping sites like this. Those of us who went up to the top of the site looking down could see what the topography looked like. However, I have to say that replacing one part with one that doesn't have disability access isn't a good excuse for why you shouldn't be looking at providing something better where it can. Councillor Eaves, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Page 34. Is this what we normally call an air source heat pump? It says ventilation and heating, heating pump, counterflow heat exchanger. Is that an air source heat pump? Does that mean that there won't be any gas boilers in this estate, which would be wonderful if that were true? I like Mr. Gossage's point about the 30 miles an hour and a little mini roundabout, perhaps. I think that's a good idea. I agree, to my own amazement, I agree yet again with Councillor Marsh about the 33% EVCPs. Why don't we have blanket provision for charging points, or at least the trunking in place, so that people can install the charging points when they move in? I don't see why the hedge has to go. Mr. Ashton mentioned that hedge, and I think this is what gives developers a bad name. They did this at the hub outside Burgess Hill. They ripped up an old hedge, which is a massive amount of habitat, and then when they'd finished, they just put in the whips, which of course would take years to re-establish. So I really don't see why the whole hedge has to go. For the sake of the locals, it would be great if it didn't. On the layout and the affordables, those are both great. The protection of dormice, all very well, but if you're building an estate, you're bringing in the domestic cats, so they're not going to last very long. And in recompense for that, would the developer consider Swift bricks actually integrated into the fabric of the house? Obviously, it doesn't work if you're using cladding. And if there are no eaves, you won't get any swallows. So I'm just worrying about the biodiversity angle there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Eaves. Councillor de Bell, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. With regards to the designs, I think Councillor Whitaker actually took the very words out of my head. I think that the officers are to be congratulated, obviously, that the whole site layout and everything is very good. And it ticks all the right boxes, as Councillor Whitaker said. Unfortunately, the boxes that it tends to tick is the houses themselves. I would challenge the developers. We've seen a number of things like this come forward. And what people need to realise is that because of this size of this development, it's going to have an impact on what is already there, out of proportion to what is already there. It's going to change the area, and therefore, as I said, I think with the artistry, it's not just a question of I don't like this, but I feel that the developers could do better. We've seen some things like this, come before us again. They're going to have an impact. They're going to change the area, and I think that they could have used artistry to produce much better designs than this. For what is basically a really good scheme. As I say, it's not the officers' fault. They have done their job and they've looked at the plans put forward. As I say, it does tick all the right boxes, but unfortunately the boxes are the houses themselves. Thanks ever so much. I can't support this.
You have to remember, councillors, that we're doing a balancing act here. It's not one thing in policy that we consider. We're considering all of the district plan policies, and we bring them together as a whole. I have to tell you, I like it. I'm a contemporary man, and I think this is, I looked and studied the facades and the rest of it very carefully, because I'm first to, as you know, to criticise the ticky-tacky boxes on the hillside, as the 1970s song called them. And I don't find that with this. I thought it was quite an exciting design concept, and it fits with our design guide. Let's not forget. I don't like it. We'll go to the design guide first and have a look and see what our policies are. If we, here we go. Sorry, Tom's losing his video. So can we just take a couple of points there, Mr. Ashdown? Particularly, I think let's talk about EV, because we're applying current policy. A wish for the future. You'll comment on, no doubt.
Yeah, that's correct. We have to apply the policies that we've got now. So you know, in terms of seeking a higher higher element than the 33%, then our policies don't allow that. You know, certainly the applicants, I'm sure, are listening to the debate this afternoon, and in terms of sort of future-proofing the development, then you know, I'm sure they would take that on board in terms of at least providing ducting to other properties in order to facilitate the long-term future of the development and future residents. But purely in terms of what we can require through the planning permission, they are providing 33%. And that is as set out in the guidance provided by the adopted guidance provided by West Sussex. So that's as far as we can go, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to tell me why the hedge that Councillor Eaves raised, why is that being taken out? Is that necessary if they're going to replant it?
I think it's all to provide the visibility displays. So the existing hedge wouldn't marry up with the visibility displays. So in terms of the new hedging and planting, that will be outside the required visibility displays for the new junctions.
Okay, thank you for that. And what about the developer listening in and thinking about Swift bricks?
They still are required to submit an ecology plan for the whole site. So those elements are still being worked up and can be considered through the discharge of the appropriate planning condition, Chairman.
Excellent. I hope that helps Councillor Reeves with some of the ecological stuff. Right, Councillor Webb, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a bit puzzled by the repeated mention of urban designer and urban development. Should we not be considering rural developments?
Okay, Mrs. Blomfield, that's yours. Why do you call him an urban designer?
I'm afraid that's convention. We don't just call him a designer. Urban means the built environment, and this, whether we like it or not, is part of the built environment.
Thank you for that. Councillor Webb, anything else that you'd like to talk about? You're muted, I'm afraid. Councillor Webb, you're muted. You unmute, please.
Thank you. I've listened to the other comments and they've all repeated the points that I had, so I won't repeat them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I've got some comments. Councillor Jackson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. There are probably two things I want to refer to, and obviously the layout and the landscaping are admirable. In terms of the affordable housing, 35% rather than 30% is again to be welcomed. However, from experience we've had in Hurstbear Point, where a developer had 40% affordable housing, and as soon as planning permission was given, that particular developer, which I think was a SLA, promptly sold it on to another developer who then demanded they could only put in 30% social housing rather than 40%. What guarantee that they're going to have 35% in this one, rather than it may well be sold on and then reduced to the 30? And my second point is towards the housing design. I'm not against contemporary design in this particular instance because it is a total development and not including within its boundaries local housing and local designs. There is scope obviously to have something more contemporary. So I'm not aggressively against this particular design because it's something which would be within that particular development itself, and it was obviously to some extent shielded anyway from the outside world, so that it can probably going to live on its own.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Hatton, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, on the design issue, I've attended quite a few design meetings on various elements that have been put forward for Hassets in the past. I don't know whether the ward members went to that. They're not here today to tell us what they thought. And there's always lots of discussion goes on, and I think they're very well run. And I think it's difficult to do design by committee. Everyone's got their own views on what they think are good or bad, and nobody's ever going to agree totally on it. So I'm not totally against it. I just think we just have to try and move forward a little bit and not have every house looking the same. The electric points has been covered. I don't know why we can't just go for a high, at least as Councillor Eves says, get it set up so you can put them in if you need them later on. I think we should be working towards that. I agree that the pathways should be suitable for wheelchairs in the park area. I think that's important. And the 4-bed houses situation, or 4 and 5-bed houses situation, and I've brought this up many times in the past actually, but we don't seem to have any 4-bed houses in the affordable housing element. And I understand that the company that are building this are a housing association, so no doubt they've got figure work on this, but I was surprised that they're not even doing any 4-bed ones. And I think that's a great pity, because even though you can sell a 5-bed house in the private sector, people that are requiring more bedrooms from the social element don't have the opportunity to live in one. And I would like to have a, an explanation why we haven't got any 4-bed, at least, not necessarily 5. Thank you.
Yeah, I think in the affordable housing, we've got 2 slants on that. I mean, I will ask Mr. Ashton to comment, but our own housing officers, along with here, we've got a social housing provider. Between the 2 of them, they haven't pushed for any 4-bedroomed houses. But Mr. Ashton, you will have been more involved with that. Could you give a comment, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah. Generally speaking, in terms of unless there is a known specific requirement for a 4-bed unit, then certainly my experience of our housing officers is that that they require the smaller family units rather than the larger ones. That there are exceptions where there is a known need for a larger unit, where they would try and seek something as part of the development. But again, I think in terms of the affordable mix, we have to be clear here that that was agreed at the outline stage. So within the legal agreement, we clearly set out as the council what affordable mix we required, and that is what the developer is providing.
Okay, thank you. Well, yep. And in terms of looking at EV, well, we are applying current policies. We've got Mrs. Blomfield, who's the divisional leader for planning, and I know that Councillor McNaughton is online listening in. Perhaps they'd like to take on board the fact that members are concerned about not having a policy which provides 100%, even of future-proofing. Did I see Councillor Sweet? Yes, Councillor Sweetman, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, some of the questions I was going to ask have already been answered about the 33% EV charging points. Well, I think Mr. Ashdown's explained that we're following county council guidelines on that, so I don't think there's anywhere to go on that issue at the moment. The layout of this site is, I think, is excellent. I think it's something that should be brought forward. There's obviously a bit of question from members on the design of some of the houses, but I've actually sat on the design review panel several times, as Mr. Ashdown probably well knows, and alongside with the urban designer. And they're saying this scheme, okay, it's contemporary, but it's not the first time we have supported innovative designs, in the outside the built-up area. So we have supported this sort of thing in the past. I think the beauty, if you like, is in the eye of the beholder. the architects that sit on that review panel, all from different practices. So they think it through very, very seriously. And to be quite honest, I've not a problem with this. If you look at the back of the development where Heathwood Park, that development is, that actually sort of, although there's a tree planting, it rolls into this development. And as Councillor Hatton said, it just wouldn't look right if all the houses were the same. It just look horrible. You have to have different designs. And I think this is a well laid out application, and I've no problem with the design on it. I think if this is refused on design, which I think would be silly to, because I think this will go to the inspector and he'll overturn it. So thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sweetman. Just like, I'm not certain who's going to take this, whether it's Mr. Ashdown or perhaps Mr. Clark. How would we solidify into an agreement the 35% affordable housing as opposed to the 30, which is our requirement? Is that you, Mr. Ashdown?
If I take that, Chairman.
Okay.
The 106 agreement is for 30%. So the extra 5% is effectively a gift. So Councillor Jackson is right. We are dependent on the applicant fulfilling the planning permission. Or anyone else fulfilling this planning permission.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Right, we've got some people wanting to come back. Just remind you that I'll only take new points. Councillor Laban, please.
Thank you, Chairman. In no particular order, the design debate, I steer you towards developments such as the Bevans, the Gables in Cookfield, some of the developments and the newer builds in Folders Lane in Burgess Hill. They are more contemporary and quite aspirational. And if anything, I would actually like to see something more contemporary on this site, but hey ho, I'll go with what we've got. In terms of the debate on the trunking and the looms for the electrical vehicle charging points, it would be nice if we can to actually note, perhaps as an informative, that whilst we accept there's a 33% planning requirement, the council would, as an informative, like to see 100% delivered under this planning application. As an informative, it's not enforceable. It's just got a very high level aspiration. And lastly, the point I did want to make was land for the school is going to be passed to West Sussex County Council. I would like to actually ensure that that land, when it's passed to them in its freehold, is held on the basis it can only be used for the provision of public education and not something else sold for development later on.
That's not something we can change today, although I sympathise with your comments. It's in the S106, Councillor, and that's where it will reside.
Right. Thank you.
Councillor Marsh, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. When I mentioned the 33%, it wasn't, I know we can't go beyond that. It's just that we're encouraging all developers, if they can't get the 33%, well, they all want to do 33%, is get the trunking in place. And that happens quite often. We've been quite successful at the other committee in getting that. You asked me about, just because I don't like it, well, there doesn't seem to be a sense of place here. It does seem to be just totally bland. Now, as you quite rightly say, house, eyes of the beholder and all the rest of it. But I'll just take you to two sites. One site was refused and one site was allowed. The one on Isaacs Lane, as you come from Burgess Hill, Rocky Lane, and you turn up towards the hospital, those block of flats, that was allowed. And I don't know anybody who's driven past that is actually saying, oh, I'm really proud that Mid Sussex built that one, because that looks really good. We, on the other committee, turned down the site at Summerhill School on the ground that we had a contemporary in the middle of a village. And that was turned down, I wouldn't say unanimous, because myself and the portfolio holder decided that we didn't think that was a good idea, but they did. And you asked for evidence about 4 and 5 bedrooms. Can I draw your attention to Sayers Common off Reeds Lane? They tried desperately to get 4 and 5 bedroom houses sold down there. It came back to my committee and we approved a scheme which resulted in a lot more housing for 3-bedroom houses, and it went through on that, doing 3-bedroom instead of 4 and 5-bedroom, because they realised they can't sell them. So there is precedent across the district, and I know there's no precedent in planning, but there are evidence that 4 and 5-bedroom houses, and you know, I don't have a problem with some 4-bedroom houses, just there's an extremely a lot of them on this site, and I wouldn't mind betting in a year's time, year and a half's time, they'll come back and say, can't sell them, can we have a load of 3-bedroom houses? I like lots and lots and lots about this scheme, the layout, the open space, lots and lots about it. There is just that niggly thing they could have done better in the way it looks. That's all. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I mean, there are a number of sites where they've done that. Hamfield, the same thing, came back, took all the 4 and 5s out and put 3s in. So there's a lot of precedent for it, but I don't believe that at this stage, you know, we're looking at the plans before us. We can't judge what the commercial opportunities are. Councillor Bates, please, you wish to come back.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. When I saw this application, the first thing I thought of, cycling hat. I was quite interested when the word cycling came up at the High Beaches Lane, and we had a condition there for some cycleways in the High Street of Linfield or a route to Staines Hill. And I can't see any mention of any contributions on this particular application, a site that's halfway between Linfield High Street and Staines Hill, and I'm sure they need more money than what is being donated via the other application. I thought that was very curious. And just one quick point about Councillor Marsh. I think that we've seen so many applications come in recently to change the number of units on a site. I don't know if there's scope to defer this application until something can be resolved on quite a few interesting points that have been raised this afternoon. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, I can understand what you feel, Councillor, but this plan has been worked up over a number of years, and I don't think we're in a position today to defer. We've got an application before us, and we're going to have to make a decision on it. As to contributions for improving cycle routes, you have to remember that we can't retrospectively put in infrastructure and ask a developer to do it. Within the S106 agreement, there is a transport contribution there. I know it's not sufficient to put in cycleways, it's £100,000, but everything has to be in reasonable proportion in what can be applied. Councillor Eves wants to come back, please.
Thank you, Chair, for taking me again. Air source heat pumps, I don't think I got an answer on that. And DP26 and Para 122C of the NPPF do encourage us to promote active travel. So as far as I'm concerned, there's no such thing as excessive unnecessary permeability. I understand what the police are saying, but I don't see why 99% of the population would be disadvantaged and wouldn't be able to walk over or cycle over that brook just because there's a tiny minority of people who are a criminal element, if you see what I mean. So active travel is great. We want people to be able to walk to Linfield. Thank you.
Quite right, and well, we should ask the police if they'd like to put a police box down there, maybe. I don't know. The ventilation, highly efficient counterflow heat exchangers with a specially designed heat pump is exactly what you thought it was. These are in common use in America with 100% heat exchange. They're usually up in the loft where you don't see them, but then the Americans put their boilers up there as well. And it is highly environmentally friendly. Does anybody want to add to that, Mr. Ashton? You've got something more to say about it? No? Okay, thank you. I see no more paws up. So we've had a very good debate on that. It's a very good report, very in depth on many subjects, and I think we've drawn out everything that could be a concern. And just make sure that we do understand what we've done. the principle of development, that wasn't our gift, that we didn't want it, but the Secretary of State told us we'd have it. So the principle of development and the access is already defined. The layout, I didn't hear anybody think the layout wasn't good. Everybody approved that. I thought it was very well considered. The appearance obviously has got people vexed with the design of the properties. I keep saying to people, if we had a planning committee in 1735, we'd all be living in timber framed houses with wattle and daub, but you know, that's just my opinion. The appearance, which is basically design, Will Dorman and the design review panel have commented on wildly, and so has the committee. Nobody mentioned scale. I thought it was very, very well done, the way they particularly brought the blocks of flats down, as people have commented, and Mr. Ashton showed us with those drawings, to keep them down to a sensible height, because normally on these developments we see these towering great pieces of architecture going up, don't we? The landscaping we've discussed to some extent. Transport and parking, pretty much in West Sussex's hands once highways tell us about these things. We note the EV stuff of the 33%, and I'm sure we'll have discussions about that for the future. Housing, we've discussed the 4 and 5 bedrooms. The 35% we've discussed, and unfortunately it can't be protected. We just hope this developer builds out and we get 35%. That would be very good. Residential amenity, nobody raised that, strangely. The inspector actually originally put in a comment saying that it did need to be looked at, and would, with a reserved application, it should be considered, and his comments are on page 26, and I think the layout, as we've discussed, addresses that. Ashdown Forest, it's not within the 7-kilometre zone. So other than that, we've got infrastructure contributions which are extensive for sport, community buildings, public toilets. 2 health centres are gaining from it. New school, yet to be built, but we keep an eye on that one. Money going to Oat Hall for development, libraries, transport roads, you know, a wide-ranging amount of infrastructure going in. And there we are. That's quite an extensive list. I see nobody else indicating. Do I have a motion at all? Is anybody going to propose? Councillor Laband. What's yes? You wish to approve this. I can't hear you. I'm sorry, Councillor.
Exactly. Sorry, Chair. Yes, I will propose that this application is approved.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you.
Do I have a seconder?
I'd like to second it.
Sorry, thank you. Councillor Webb was there first. So it's proposed by Councillor Laban, seconded by Councillor Webb, that this application is approved. And I'll take you now to the legal officer, please, for the vote.
And just on that, Chairman, can I check that you're happy to include the update sheet condition and additional information?
I should have read out the full application of the matter that we're voting on. The consent be granted subject to conditions listed in Appendix A and the update sheet. So that's the motion, as pointed out by Mr. Clark. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Bates.
I agree. I'm for it.
Councillor DeBell.
For.
Councillor Eaves.
In favour.
Councillor Hatton.
For.
Councillor Jackson.
For.
Councillor Band.
For.
Councillor Marsh.
Reluctantly for.
Councillor Peacock not here. Councillor Salisbury.
For.
Councillor Sweatman.
For.
Councillor Webb.
For.
And Councillor Whitaker.
Against.
That's 10 in favour, Chairman, 1 against, so it's carried.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. This application then is approved. Sorry, just jostle my paperwork around. So moving on to item 7, DM 204178. The purpose of the report is to ask the District Planning Committee to consider and agree proposed variations to the legal agreement secured as part of the outline planning permission DM 185114 on the Northern Arc. I'm going to ask Louise Yandel to give us an explanation on this report. This is unusual, members, to see an S106 come to us for changes, but that's because of the extremely large scheme, and it necessitates our agreement when such a large number of changes are there. And perhaps it's difficult for us. I mean, when you saw this, you might have initially thought, you know, gosh, what does this mean? It's got to be viewed against the master plan for the Northern Arc. It's a very lengthy, complex build out, and therefore, as detailed work came in, quite clearly the planners were going to find that they needed to link various bits together, and so I'll ask Louise please to explain it all to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So just before I start the presentation, I would firstly like to advise that there is an update to the report in the agenda. For those of you who haven't seen the update sheet, the update relates to page 59 of the agenda report. In the agenda, it sets out that the existing trigger for determining whether healthcare provision will be on site or as a financial contribution needs to be determined 6 months prior to the, sorry, it says 6 months from the occupation of the development, whereas the actual legal agreement currently sets out that this should be 6 months prior to the occupation of the development. So I'll turn to the presentation. So as set out by the Chairman, this application relates to the Northern Arc, and members are being asked to consider if amendments proposed to the legal agreement, which was secured as part of the main outline application on the Northern Arc, is acceptable. And again, as set out by the Chairman, the request is being presented to the District Planning Committee for a decision because of the number of changes proposed to the legal agreement. The changes proposed are all quite minor in nature, but taken together form a large number. Whilst legal agreement amendments are not usually presented to the committee, given the strategic nature and scale of the development and the number of changes proposed, it was considered appropriate that the District Planning Committee consider this request. So this is an aerial image of the Northern Arc, and this is just to remind members of the scale and location of the development. The site comprises just over 180 hectares and wraps around the north of the existing developed area of Burgess Hill. The area here, where my cursor is now, is not part of the original outline application, but is part of the Northern Arc. And this is Freaks Farm, which is subject to a separate planning consent for 460 homes, open space and play areas. This development is currently under construction, and the road junction with Maple Drive is substantially completed. The contaminated land has been subject to remediation, and house construction is now well underway. This slide shows the approved land use plan. The outline application granted planning permission for approximately 3,040 dwellings, including 60 units of extra care accommodation, and the housing would all be located within these beige areas where my cursor is pointing on the screen now, dotted around the site. As part of the proposal, there would also be 13 permanent gypsy and traveller pitches. There would be a centre for outdoor sport, which is located in this green area down here where my cursor is showing now. There would be 3 local centres proposed as part of the development. The first here to the west of the site, the second here in the centre of the site, and finally the third one here in the east of the site. There would also be healthcare facilities, a 4-hectare employment development, and the employment development is shown in this blue area here, just south of the A2300. There would be 2 primary schools, one located here in the central neighbourhood centre and one here in the eastern neighbourhood centre. A secondary school, which is proposed to be located up here in the purple area. Various public open space, recreation areas, play areas, which includes free formal parks and a large amount of informal open space, which is all the areas in white between the beige areas. These would all be open space areas. So really the purpose of showing you this slide is just to remind you what the development is for, and also to remind members that this is the most complex application that the district has dealt with, and it's not unusual for changes on a development of this scale to be made to the legal agreement during the progress of the various applications. So this slide shows the phasing plan that was also approved as part of the outline planning application. The blue areas are phase 1 of the development, which are proposed to be developed between 2021 and 2026. The orange areas are phase 2 of the development, which is proposed to be developed between 2026 and 2028. The green areas are phase 3, which are proposed to be developed between 2028 and 2031. And finally, the yellow areas are phase 4, which would be developed between 2031 and 2034. So since the time of the outline application, when members saw this before, a large amount of feasibility work to refine the phasing has been completed. And as officers, we now have a much more mature understanding of the interrelationships between the various parcels and each of the phases. Approval of a detailed phasing plan is a requirement of the outline permission, and this is a draft phasing plan which shows the complexity of the phasing. As you can see, each of the 4 phases is broken down into sub-phase parcels. Now, this feasibility work, which has been carried out by Homes England, has enabled them to commit to an accelerated delivery of the areas to the east of the site, which is sort of this area where my cursor is now. And this will include both the housing and the associated infrastructure on this side of the site, such as the Eastern Neighbourhood Centre, which is here, and the Eastern Primary School, which is here, and the Eastern Community Centre, which again would be located within the Eastern Neighbourhood Centre. And the Northern Arc development forms a large part of the planned housing for the district for the plan period as set out in the district plan. And the development is due to commence this spring, with the first parts of the development getting on site would be the Eastern Bridge and Link Road, which is here. And this links the Freaks Farm development, which I outlined earlier, with Isaac's Lane, and also the Western Link Road, which is here where my cursor is now, and that would link Jane Murray Way with the A2300. And we are expecting those areas to commence this spring. So as set out in the agenda report, the changes to the legal agreement can be summarised as amending the following. The timing for agreement of certain design elements, the open space, some of the open space parcel boundaries, the timings for the transfer of the Adur open space, the timings for the delivery of the community facilities, including the removal of the requirement of the temporary community building due to the acceleration of the first permanent community building, the timing of the health centre delivery or the financial contribution for health, the timing of highways improvements, and the primary and secondary parcel boundaries. Now, I do not propose this afternoon to go through all these changes in detail, as the information is set out in the table on pages 56 to 60 of the agenda report. However, following on from the presentation, I'll be happy to answer any questions on the detail that members may have. These changes are considered by officers to all be sensible changes that enable appropriate information to be submitted at appropriate times in the programme based on when particular parts of the development will be coming forward. Changes to timings for the provision of infrastructure are based on the needs requirements, and none of the changes are considered to result in unacceptable delays to infrastructure delivery, which is still proposed to be delivered at pace by Homes England. The only changes to quantity and quality of infrastructure provision result in overall improvements to infrastructure provision on the site as a whole. And officers therefore recommend that the committee approve the amendments. And as I said, I'll be happy to answer any questions that members may have. Thank you, Chairman. Apologies, I'm just trying to stop sharing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Louise, for that. Members, the changes are outlined in Louise's report on pages 56 through to 60, with the explanation of why the officers consider the amendments to be satisfactory. Does anybody have anything they wish to discuss on this or questions for Louise? Councillor Marsh, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very, very short question. What is the Ada open space, please? Because we're in mid-Sussex, Ada's over there. So could you just let me know? I should know, but for the love of money, I can't know what Ada open space is. Could you just let us know, please? Thank you.
Yes, Louise, perhaps you'd like to answer that one. You've got a little chart to show somebody.
Yeah, I'll take you to a plan. So just share my screen again. Right, so this plan that I'm showing you now, this shows all the various open space parcels that are proposed to be transferred to Mid-Sussex as part of the development. And the Ada open space is this area here and here. So on the original plan, it was one entire area, and it's now been divided into two, OS 1.2S, which is where my cursor is now, and OS 1.2N. The reason why it's referred to as the Ada open space is because this is where the River Ada runs through. So this piece of open space would bound the river. So that's why it's referred to as such. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Councillor Whitaker, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of quick points. Firstly, the overall principle of the 106, I appreciate that there's a number of small amendments which I'm agreeable to. Can I just seek clarification, please, that the responsibility for delivering the 106 will remain with Homes England, reporting to Mid-Sussex District Council, because the Homes England modus operandi is once they've put the main roads and infrastructure in, they'll sell parcels of land off to various developers. So will Homes England retain the 100% liability for the 106 agreement? And secondly, on page 58, there's a nuanced name change for the Centre for Community Sport is now the Centre for Outdoor Sport. Is there a particular reason for that, please? Thank you.
Louise, perhaps you could pick those points up, please. Right.
So firstly, I'll take your second question first. The Centre for Outdoor Sport is really just a Mid-Sussex decision to change the name of that, and as a result of that name change, it's been reflected in the section 106. So it really is, as you say, a nuance. And in relation to the responsibility of Homes England for delivering all the infrastructure, yes, that does remain with Homes England. They may, of course, pass on development to the developers as they divide up the land, but as the landowner, then the responsibility falls with them to make sure that is provided. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, the other side of the way Homes England work is that they also remain in control and then contract developers to come in to build the site. So that's another way that they act. I see no more questions. So I'm going to take you to what we're being asked to do. The District Planning Committee is asked to consider and agree proposed variations to the legal agreement secured as part of the outline planning permission DM 185114 on the Northern Arc, and with no further questions, I will then ask Mr. Clark, please, to take a list of those agreeing to approve this.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Bates.
Agreed.
Councillor DeBell.
Agreed.
Councillor Eaves.
Agreed.
Councillor Hatton.
Agreed.
Councillor Jackson.
Agreed.
Councillor Laband.
Agreed.
Councillor Marsh.
Agree.
Councillor Salisbury.
Agree.
Councillor Swetman.
Agreed.
Councillor Webb.
Agreed.
And Councillor Whitaker.
Agreed.
That's 11 in favour, Chairman, unanimous.
Thank you very much, in which case we agree to those amendments. Thank you very much. Moving on then to item 8, questions pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10.2, due notice of which has been given. I have none. I have nothing further to do then to thank you all very much indeed for your attendance and for a very stirring debate today. And look forward to seeing you again in February. So thank you all and good afternoon. And can everybody please remain in place until the live streaming has finished?